This video is supported by Rocket Railways for all your model railway needs. Please check the link in the description below. Hello and welcome back to Galgormhall. It's a bit of a different one this time round as I'm building something in 1/32nd scale, but as a model railway fan, don't be put off because I'm going to show you right at the end that what I'm building here could be easily adapted to work on your model railway too. A friend of mine had asked if I could build him a small program ticket hut type booth. He had shared a photograph with me and asked if I could do that for him. And in looking at it, I sort of realised that it's something that could be easily adapted to work on the model railway too. So what I'm going to do is go through the build process with you with the 1/32nd scale version. It's a little bit easier to work with, but right at the end I'll show you what you can actually do with it and to produce it in 00 gauge as well. So I've cut out all the pieces prior to the assembly, and what we have here is essentially everything that we need to build this little hut. First up, we have 4 posts. The first of these are the 2 front ones, and they measure 65mm in length. There is a small angle at one end, and that's only approximately a millimetre shallower at the back side of that. And then the second set of posts is exactly the same in terms of the shallow slope, but they measure 60mm in height. We have 6 crossbars. The 2 longer ones will be for the back end of the hut, and they measure 35mm in length, and the side ones measure 25mm in length. And all of the upright posts and the bars are 3mm square rod. Next we have the panels, and these have been made using 2mm plastic card, and the length of each of them matches the bars. So the 2 smaller ones are 25mm wide and the larger one is 35mm wide, and all 3 of them measure a height of 23mm. Now, prior to cutting them out, it's advisable to take it and score lines right along the length of it. Do this in advance. One, it's much easier to make the markings whenever it's a full length sheet like this, but equally whenever you cut them, then it means whenever they do go together that you can have those lines will marry up perfectly whenever you're assembling the structure. Finally, we have 2 lengths of plastic card here. These are 1mm thick sheets, and the lower one is 5mm wide and the upper one is 10mm wide. Now these are full lengths at the minute, but they will be cut down to fit around as the valance around the top of that hut. And then finally another 1mm thick sheet of plastic card has been cut to 45mm by 33mm, and that is for our roof. Right, I've made a little simple jig just out of a ruler and a piece of plastic, and this is just to keep everything getting butted up nicely whenever we're gluing. The first things we need to do is to add our bars to our panels, and we're going to just repeat this same process the 3 times, and it's essentially just run along with plastic weld on each end. And once that goes off, we can flip it over and do the other side, and then repeat the process for both smaller panels too. You may also find that in your cutting you might just be out by slightly, half a millimetre or something like that between the panel and the square rod, and just take a piece of sandpaper and carefully sand that back until it's absolutely perfect. With the bars and the panels now glued, we're ready to construct the actual hut. And what we're going to do is start with the back posts, which are the shorter 60mm ones. If we place one right along the edge of a ruler, making sure that the slope is angling down towards the cutting mat. And then I've also set this measuring jig up with a 5mm gap between the bottom of the plastic here and the yellow line on the mat. And I will marry that up with the panel. So I'm now left essentially with 5mm gap at the bottom of our hut, and then I can glue that with some plastic weld. And while we're at it, we will put in the other rear post too. With that now glued, we can start on our side panels, and I've just taken the rear one and I've placed it sideways, and we're going to put up the other panel right up against it and along that line, and again we can run our glue along the edge. And while we're at it, we'll fit the front post too, making sure that your slope is running back downwards towards the rear of the hut. And then we'll repeat that exact same procedure for the other side. Now with all that glue dried off, now we can turn our attention to the fascia boards round the three sides at the back first. And we've got our 5mm wide, 1mm thick plastic card, and we are just going to line it up. It helps actually to have another sheet of plastic card just sitting underneath to help bring it up level, and I'm just lining that with the lower end of the slope, and once satisfied with the position, again it's just a drop of plastic weld. And just give that a few seconds to go off, and then we can take a craft knife and just trim it right to the edge of the post. Now just give that a few minutes to go off, and then you can sand this back and repeat the process with your piece of plastic card going up either side, and again cutting just right at the edge of the post on both sides. With the side pieces all done now, it's only a matter of adding the front signage. Now if you weren't wanting to put signage on this, you would just run another 5mm strip across here, but if you do want to put a sign, say like ticket office or something like that onto it, you'll place the 10mm one on here, and what we're doing is lining up with the bottom of the fascia on each of these two sides so that it rises up above the height of the roof. And again we just follow exactly the same procedure as we did previously. There we go. Now these edges may well just need a little bit of a sanding down before we put the roof on, so I'll just let that glue dry off, sand that back, and then we'll be right back to do the roof. Final piece of the jigsaw then is the 1mm thick roof, and it is going to sit just slightly over the edge right the way around it, and this is the only part of the build that I'm not using the plastic weld. I'd rather use the Revel contactor, as it'll give me a little bit more time just to maneuver it into position until I'm happy with it. And that is simply just a matter of finding your center spots right the way around it, and hopefully you've made it fairly square, and it's just going to sit on there quite nicely. And there we have it. It's one little multi-purpose hut. All that's left to do now is to give it a coat of primer and then apply whatever colour of paint choice that you would like. I have already completed one of these in 1/32 scale, and primed it in grey Halford's primer, and then I've used Humbrol dark green spray to go over the top of that. And the only other thing I want to do to this is to add something onto the roof just to create that sort of felt roof effect, and what I'm going to use is P800 grey sandpaper, and it's literally just been cut down to the size of the roof. I've then gone over it with another piece of sandpaper, and it's just a matter of gluing it into place with a little touch of rocket card glue on the back of it. And that's it. Job done. Now, I did promise at the beginning of this video that there would be something railway related with regards to this booth, and I have produced a 00 gauge version of it as well. Now, this has been built in exactly the same way as the 1/32 scale one. The only difference being is the size of the materials. For the posts I have used 1.5mm square rod. For the panels I have used 1mm thick plastic card, and for the roof and the fascia boards it is 0.5mm plastic card. In terms of the overall dimensions, essentially if you divide down by 2.375 you will get from 1/32 scale measurements to 00 gauge measurements. Now, you may need to alter those slightly because obviously they don't all come out as full round numbers, but I tended to round up to the nearest whole number whenever I was producing this particular one here. This could obviously also be replicated in O gauge as well, and if you were really keen you could do an N gauge version of it, but that would be mighty fiddly. The likes of Stephen over at Elvenholme could probably turn his hand to this quite well. It is a very versatile little build. You could make variations on this. Obviously I've gone with the one with the sign on top, and for my own one I've chosen not to put the signage on it. You could extend out the back of it more. You could create a little half panel at the front to create a bus shelter. It could be used as a ticket booth, a program hut as it is in the 1/32 scale version of it. It could be a little security hut, and that's what I'm going to use it for over on the branch side of the layout there. It'll just be a little hut entering into the yard. So the world is your oyster in this. I hope it'll have been of some use to you, and hopefully I'll get to see a few of these being replicated. And please, if you do actually follow through and replicate one of these, please share it with me on Facebook. I'd be delighted to see it. I will leave you now with a few photographs of the two finished pieces on their respective layouts, and just say thank you very much for watching, and I'll be back again soon with another video. Bye for now.